Springtide Resources, Ending Gender-Based Violence, Celebrating 40 Years. Caption: Inclusive violence against women shelters for older deaf women and older women with disabilities.
The population of adults 65 and older is growing at a rapid rate. By 2031, it is predicted that 1 in 4 Canadians will be over the age of 65. There are more older women than men at 56%. 42% of women 65 and older identify as having a disability. Older women with disabilities experience violence at a higher rate than older women without disabilities. For example, the victimization rate for older women with disabilities is 15.3%, and for older women without a disability, it is 13.8%.
An open door is sketched. Inside, a figure grips the arm of another.
More older adults with disabilities report physical or sexual abuse by an intimate partner than non-disabled older adults. Older women with disabilities report this the highest.
The door slams.
At 6.7%.
An old woman weeps as her purse lays open.
Violence against older women with disabilities takes many forms.
A girl walks off with money.
Financial abuse.
In a different sketch, an elderly woman lies alone in a bed, her pills strewn across her night table.
Neglect.
Some other time, the elderly woman is restrained in bed by a younger lady. The tormented woman winces in agony.
Abuse by caregivers.
The caregiver raises an open hand to the woman. Another sketch depicts a woman in a wheelchair next to a looming figure. Her hand is raised in defense.
Intimate partner violence.
In a hallway, an older South Asian woman wearing bracelets is held at knife point.
Vulnerability to crime.
The word barriers fades in on screen.
There are many barriers to accessing violence against women's shelters for older deaf women and older women with disabilities.
Against a white background, 3 women are sketched in pencil, then colored in. One of the women sits anxiously in a wheelchair.
For example, they can't leave the institution where the abuse is happening.
A new sketch shows the woman in the wheelchair being spoon-fed. Her chin-length gray hair is unkempt.
They may be dependent on their abuser.
An accessible bus is drawn.
There is a lack of accessible transportation.
A red circle with a line across it is colored over the bus. Later, a concerned woman gazes out of a window, her cheek resting against her palm.
Maybe they are unaware or don't think shelters are an option.
A thought bubble appears next to the window. It reads, "Where can I go?" In a different sketch, a frowning woman holds a paper which reads, "Blood test."
Shelters can't provide for the medical and health needs that they have.
A pencil sketch begins with the outline of the woman in the wheelchair. Soon after, steps leading to a door are added. As the pencil strokes continue, the sketch becomes a colorful drawing. The woman stares hopelessly at the door.
There is a lack of accessibility in shelters.
A guidebook is drawn against a white background.
Springtide Resources has produced a resource guide on inclusive practice ideas for violence against women's shelters. This guide shares information on the minimum requirements to make shelters more accessible under the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation. Accessibility standards in the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation include, for example, Customer Service Standard, Employment Standard, Information and Communication Standard, Design of Public Spaces Standard, and the Transportation Standard. The Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation applies to shelters. The requirements and deadlines shelters need to follow depend on the type and size of your organization. Ontario has laws to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. These laws and standards are Ontario's action plan to become accessible for people with disabilities. You can learn more about the standards you need to follow and reporting deadlines for complying with accessibility requirements in this resource guide. This resource guide also offers some tips for addressing barriers to shelter services in the following key areas: adapting or proposing new procedural and process practices, person-centered age and disability sensitivity practice, policy and program reforms, outreach, awareness, and promotion, building partnerships in your community.
Springtide Resources, ending gender-based violence, celebrating 40 years. www.springtideresources.org